Hello and welcome to Omni Edition Garden City. I'm your host, Dan York, and with me is Derek Fisher, the superintendent of the Garden City Public Schools. And obviously, the subject today is COVID, the reaction to the from the school district to COVID, and their plans for the fall surrounding that. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate being here.
We've used the term unprecedented so many times, but it's still not overkill because there still is no playbook for any of this. There still is no specific guidance from the state, possibly not as much as you'd like. Where does it stand right now today? Because I still run into people who don't understand or don't know whether or not their kids are actually going to physical school at the end after Labor Day.
As of September 8th, our first day of school, we are starting fully online. So all programs, pre-K through 12, including Berger and Cambridge, will have an online start for this school year.
Okay, and that is almost exactly what was going on at the end of the last school year.
Correct. And if you look where we're at with the numbers in regards to daily number of cases, rate of infection, percent positive, the numbers that we're seeing currently, while they dropped a bit since July, that spike there, the numbers we're seeing currently in regard to COVID-19 cases are pretty consistent with where they were at in May.
Okay.
We remain in phase 4. There was some speculation that the state could be moved to phase 3. It appears we're going to
move back to phase 3.
Move back to phase 3. Yeah, there was some speculation that could happen. It appears we're staying in phase 4. Schools can provide face-to-face instruction during phase 4. However, there's very strict protocols. And ultimately, the decision is left up to the local governing body, which in this case would be the school board, and a number of districts across Wayne County, including some very large districts, like Garden City, have chosen to go with the online start.
And as we record this at the end of August, some districts have started and some districts have backed off already.
Correct. We know we've had some districts in Livingston County, and some districts in Oakland County who've opened. They've been open for a short amount of time. They've had a number of either student athletes, students, and or staff members test positive, and they've moved back and put everybody onto the online only format.
Okay. So you mentioned that this was the decision of the Garden City School District.
Correct. After the recommendation, we went through and we presented to the board. We brought a plan before the board in a board workshop that took place on August 3rd, and there was quite a bit of discussion and feedback. And then on August 10th, based on that feedback we received, the recommendation was to move forward with the online start.
Now, there was a requirement by the school district to present a plan to the state that had to be approved by the school board. Has our plan been accepted by the state?
Yes, absolutely. That was submitted shortly after that August 10th board meeting.
Okay. There are parameters that the state issued, but really they were very broad.
Extremely broad. And the governor gave schools a roadmap for return to school. That came out on June 30th. And then we worked with a number of stakeholder groups once we received that roadmap to move forward. We worked with teachers and parents and administrators and special educators to really formulate an entry plan for the district. And ultimately that was, the focus was twofold. The focus was first and foremost on staff and safety for staff and students, but also parental choice, right? And recognizing that there are going to be parents out there who would be uncomfortable with the reentry during phase 4, and some parents would want to see students in school during phase 4. So we planning basically for 2 modes of instruction. That will serve us well when we look to reopen, because we know we're still offering that parent choice, and we know that once we do reopen, there'll be a number of students who will elect to remain online.
And even though it was the school board's decision, ultimately you're the guy that has to execute this on a daily basis. Would you have preferred the state gave you stricter guidelines?
More specific guidelines, and then certainly because we are looking at a pretty specific mandate, and yes, there's been some CARES money and also what we call GEARS money now, which is the governor's emergency education resource fund. Anytime you're dealing with mandates like this and preparation, you're going to spend quite a bit of money on resources and support both academically and in this case for safety, right? So the district, we have 13 pallets of PPE that have recently been delivered. We've purchased somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 new devices to support our inventory and support our online learners. And we've also moved forward with the Schoology learning management system that we're integrating currently to support instruction K through 6.
K through 6. So that brings me to the next point. Last year, you guys hustled to get Chromebooks
Yep.
or laptops into the hands of kids, but for the most part, it was one per household. I don't know if that was a strict rule, but that's what you tried to do.
No, not a strict rule, yeah. We really encouraged, we had staggered times so that we could accommodate as many kids as possible with as few devices in the inventory. With where we're at right now, the moniker, the term that's out there is robust. That's the adjective we're using to describe this, because for all intents and purposes, the online day will simulate and emulate that in-person instruction. So
Sure.
Our start times, for instance, at the high school, first hour will start at 7:20, and then students will matriculate through their bell schedule.
Okay.
Likewise, like at Douglas's start time is 8 a.m., they'll start at 8 a.m. So we're trying to keep as much consistency for instruction and then start time with the online format as we would the in-person format.
Now, we don't expect kids to sit there for 6 hours in front of a computer screen. This is give them some instruction, give them some time, give them some direction, let them work on whatever it is they're working on. It's not a teacher lecturing
Correct.
for 6 hours a day.
Correct, and certainly that, we're going by best practices and guidance too with age levels. So a student at Lathers, the period that they're going to be online is going to be shorter. There'll be multiple times throughout the day, but their period of time that they spend online will be shorter than, say, a sixth grader or
Sure.
a middle school student.
Sure. Do we have enough Chromebooks now to distribute to everybody? Because that's been the thing, right? We're offering one to every student.
We've got a number of Chromebooks. We're certainly encouraging, if you have your own device and can use your own device, that would be ideal. As with all of the supply chains, regardless of if it's automotive or electronics, there are some delays in the supply chain. So we do have a number of Chromebooks that have come in already, and we're expecting to continue to have deliveries throughout September. But by mid to end September, we fully anticipate that we will be a one-to-one district.
I assume the one thing the school district really can't get involved with is assisting parents with internet within their home. I mean, that's really too big of a bite to take, isn't it?
Actually, we can help with that.
Okay.
And we have helped with that. That was we've purchased hotspots, mobile hotspots, that
Okay.
for parents who don't have internet connection or Wi-Fi support, they can contact our tech department, contact the help desk, and we will provide them with a mobile hotspot.
Okay.
And right now with our surveys, what we're finding out is between 96 and 98% of our student households, they do have that connectivity.
Where's the money coming for this stuff?
Money coming from this stuff, we are looking at CARES money. So CARES money can be utilized for PPE, and like I said, we do have a substantial amount of PPE that's been purchased. Likewise, CARES money can be applied towards technology.
It's got a little weird over the summer because the kids started to go back to practice. It was mostly no-touch practice. It was all outside. They weren't even allowed to go in and use the bathrooms or go into the building at all. And then the MHSAA, which sometimes the MHSAA tries to invoke rules and sometimes they don't. In this case, they moved the football season from the fall to the spring.
Correct.
Still leaving volleyball, swimming, and soccer, and I assume girls or boys tennis. I don't know which one is in the
we
fall.
have tennis as well as cross country.
And cross country. So those
And golf.
Okay, and those are all staying in the fall, but are on hold.
We can expect, for all intents and purposes with golf, cross country, and tennis, the anticipation is because those are low risk sports, because we can maintain a degree of distance with those sports. They're not contact sports.
Right.
For all intents and purposes, we can expect that those will move forward.
Because we're in their competition season. They could be playing right now.
Correct.
If they wanted to, but we don't have anything scheduled yet as far as we haven't had games or meets or matches, right?
There is a tennis match that is scheduled for the end of this week.
Okay.
So
All right, I did
we'll
not
see if
realize
that moves forward. We're waiting for continued guidance from the MHSAA. You know, I recognize that some folks are like, well, how can you not be in school but offer sports? But we signed an agreement with the MHSAA as our sort of the governing body for Michigan high school sports, and we follow that agreement.
So, you know, in Florida, there's the Tim Tebow rule where kids can be homeschooled and still participate in sports. So there's a little bit of a similarity there in that these kids are still active in school.
Absolutely.
But it is a contradiction. We're saying that it's not safe enough to go sit in the buildings, but we're letting the kids participate in sports. But obviously this is voluntary, and it's the decision of themselves and their parents.
It is voluntary, and then there is, like I said, the ability, you know, if you're on a tennis court, you can certainly if you're playing singles, you've got your 6 foot of social distance and you're outdoors. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit different than being in a classroom with, you know, 26 to 32 students.
Right, and obviously volleyball, I think, offers the biggest challenge because it is indoors. There is physical contact between the players. They go to the net and breathe on each other.
And the jury is still out. We're waiting for guidance. We expect guidance and an ultimate sort of resolution to whether we move forward with volleyball, soccer, and swim. We expect that guidance Friday or Monday.
Attendance is going to count, whereas last year it may have been a little lax because no one knew what they were doing. We were doing the best we could.
And actually, we maintained pretty solid attendance last year overall,
okay.
I'm proud to say.
All right.
It was pretty solid participation.
But it's definitely going to be mandated. If you are enrolled in the Garden City Schools, you are expected to participate in this online platform.
School is starting. And,
School is starting.
First day is Monday. First day is Tuesday, September 8th, the day after Labor Day. And school does count. As it did last year. There's just greater expectation now with compliance, and part of that is the attendance piece, and then certainly grades moving forward. This is all new material, all new curriculum for our students.
In the past 20, 25 years, the schools have become very important in the area of nutrition and distributing food to feed people who need it, or getting kids fed in school that maybe aren't getting the proper nutrition at home. How have you dealt with that? While school has been closed, how will you deal with that going forward?
Well, since school has been closed, we have continued to provide grab-and-go meals for all students and all families. That went very well, and what we see moving forward into the fall, we're getting some additional guidance right now from the FDA on this, because ultimately they have oversight over school lunch and nutritional programs. So we're waiting for an approval of an additional waiver to continue moving forward with that same type of distribution, and hopefully that happens. Regardless, if that doesn't happen, we will still be able to provide lunches on a regular basis for our students who receive free lunch, and that will be a grab-and-go style lunch. We're hopeful we'll be able to offer that to everybody. We're still working with our food service provider, Aramark, on that. They're working very closely with us and in strong cooperation to move this forward, and we're hopeful that we'll get some additional support from the state and the federal government.
When you refer to phase 4, I know like the court system is on a totally different scale and schedule. Is phase 4 the same thing to you that phase 4 is to me?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that aligns to the Michigan Safe Start Plan with 6 phases overall.
Okay. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but when do you anticipate kids going back to in-person learning, or at least the beginnings of that?
Sure. Ultimately, you know, we're not trying to be ambiguous about this, but when it's deemed safe to do so. And how will we determine the safety? Well, what we're doing every day is we're monitoring Wayne County in Region 1, which is the Detroit area. We're monitoring that very closely. What we're looking at is daily number of COVID-19 cases. We're also closely monitoring the rate of infection, as well as the % of positive test, and then the ICU headroom.
Are you following that as a statewide number, or are you following it within that region?
We're looking specifically at Wayne County.
Okay, but Wayne County including Detroit, or Wayne County not including Detroit?
We're drilling down and pretty much just looking at Wayne County, not including Detroit.
Okay, because that's how the state has been
Yep.
managing those numbers, is keeping Detroit separate from the rest of the county.
And, you know, the rationale behind, you know, kind of looking at the Wayne County piece, and it's, you know, more of our area, our geographic area, is we realize that Garden City is 6.1 square miles. We realize that our folks, our students, our parents, they don't stay in Garden City. They travel. Likewise, folks from across Wayne County come to Garden City. And we're surrounded by some big neighborhoods and big communities, Dearborn, Westland, Livonia. And each of those communities have struggled and have had their own pockets and owned their own outbreaks.
Sure.
So given that proximity, given the number of schools of choice students we have, and also our center program with Berger and Cambridge that serves all of Wayne County, we've got to be kind of really mindful of the bigger pattern outside of Garden City on the status of COVID.
It must be very difficult for the Berger program, because that's not really a virtual program. That is a hands-on experience
Absolutely.
for these kids, and this has got to be very troublesome for that program.
Yes, and you know, fortunately, we've got, as we do across the district, we've got very creative and dedicated teachers. We've got parents who are proactive and positively engaged in their students' learning. That's helped. However, we recognize across the district that cyber school or online school will never replace good face-to-face instruction.
Sure.
So with the Berger question particularly, ideally when we see a safe time to return, when we look at a return plan, we look at moving that Berger program to the top of the list, as well as our lower elementaries.
Okay. We didn't mention at the beginning of the program, but we should have. We want to talk about some positive stuff too.
Sure.
I guess in sort of a warped way, this lends you an opportunity as far as with the huge bond that was approved by the residents of the city over the past year, $50 million in renovations coming to the Garden City public school system. Does this allow you to get a head start on some of these projects since the kids aren't in the building?
You know, not necessarily a head start, but it does allow contractors and architects to get in the building without necessarily being interrupted. We still have to engage in the bid process and schedule these jobs and work around construction schedules. But it has allowed us a lot of opportunity to get contractors and architects into the building to do site visits, to do project planning, that type of thing. So that'll help expedite the process, definitely.
So this is heavily loaded towards the junior high and the high school, if that's a correct statement, as far as, because the elementary schools were just redone within the last 20 years, and even though they need upgrades also, the high school did not get any upgrades in the last round of upgrades. The middle school has been sort of left out in the cold ever since it became the middle school.
Right.
So a lot of this stuff is front-loaded towards the high school and the middle school.
Yeah, the early projects certainly are going to be focused on that secondary area, high school, middle school, and then Cambridge. We are going to circle back, and every building is going to get extensive upgrades and remodeling. But with the age of the high school, middle school, and Cambridge, and the fact that those buildings weren't necessarily touched or renovated to anywhere near the extent that the elementary buildings were, I mean, our focus.
Elementary schools were gutted to the brick walls and started over.
So yeah, we're working on right now the jobs that are on the front burner, and we'll start moving forward with in the spring. We're going to renovate the main entry and front office of the Garden City High School, focused on security and just customer service. We're also going to renovate and completely redo the high school MRC and Commons area. The focus there will be on collaborative learning spaces, similar to what you would kind of see in a Google-type environment, and support of technology. So students have a place to go, and teachers have a place to take kids and do different types of assignments.
Has the COVID pandemic affected at all your thoughts as to what you're doing with some of these things? Because again, these are very in-person, small groups of kids, a lot of contact. Has that changed any of your thoughts?
I mean, just the way we utilize space and being mindful of movement. There's been a focus on that with the architect. Ultimately what we do realize that, yes, we're anxious to get to phase 5, and we're really hoping to get to phase 6 sooner rather than later. But what we do know is there'll come a time, just like with the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, that lasted approximately 18 months. There will come a time with the COVID-19 pandemic where it will end, it will be defeated, and we can move forward. And our buildings will be there, they'll be ready, and they'll be ready to go for the next 30 plus years with a contemporary design to support our Garden City kids.
Okay. Also, big renovations to the science wing or the
Yes,
science
absolutely.
classrooms at the high school.
Science classrooms at the high school are going to be renovated. Those classrooms, the design and layout of those classrooms were pretty much consistent with the Truman administration and the 1950 build of the building. So that'll be quite a remarkable renovation when that's complete. So that'll be one of the items that's moved to the front burner.
In my own opinion, you don't have to comment on this at all if you don't want to, but when they made the decision to consolidate from two high schools to one, they went to a much older building than what they left, which became the middle school.
Correct.
And the belief at the time was the district had hoped to be able to sell Garden City West, which is now the middle school, because they thought it was a more marketable building. I think had they known we would have been in the place we are now 30 years after the fact, they may have stayed at West and expanded, and expanded out. But having not done that, there are some really old rooms and really old infrastructure at what is now Garden City High School.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, the building itself, it's been through numerous renovations. And the cornerstone of that building, it goes back to, the 1950 build. So you're looking at a building that's 70 years old. The good thing about that is that the construction methods and the materials used were built to last. So the bones of the building, the foundation of the building is very strong. Now, does it need some upgrades? Absolutely. We're excited about that. We know we have new windows in the building, relatively new roof and boilers, but now it's really time to polish that building up.
The pool, this is an interesting thing because we were basically regulated out of the pool business. Now, obviously, we had some hardware problems and some infrastructure problems there too. But eventually, they changed the rules for diving, said you had to be X amount of feet above the water, but also you have to be so far from the ceiling. And it is a very low ceiling. Yeah. And then eventually our kids were not even allowed to jump off the sides of the pool because the pool was determined to be too shallow.
Correct. By MHSAA guidelines, it was too shallow for out-of-pool entry.
So that will be fixed?
Yeah. The competition pool will be brought up to full MHSAA specs.
So they'll be able to use not diving boards, but jumping boards or whatever they're called, starting blocks.
Starting blocks.
Thank you. And literally that means taking the roof off. That's part of it, right?
Redoing the roof deck of that pool facility. That was, that goes back to 61, and it's a rebar and construction roof, or rebar and cement roof. So they really don't use that type of build anymore, and that's over the years that's deteriorated and challenged. So they will remove that.
They built a road over the pool,
exactly.
essentially.
It's like a highway overpass going over the pool. So that'll be removed, and they will put a whole new roof structure on there, and the whole pool deck will be redone, and then that competition pool will be dug out and redone and retiled, and we'll have a really nice facility for competition.
And there were conversations about possibly taking the pool at the middle school and doing this there instead because it has a slightly higher roof. It is a slightly bigger room.
Correct.
But ultimately the decision was made to repair the one at the high school. Yeah,
and ultimately that came down to when we started looking at repurposing cost for the pool or a demolition of that pool. You're getting into 60, 70, 80% cost of the restoration of the pool facility itself.
Okay.
So we were in for a penny, in for a pound at that point. And the feedback that we had from our stakeholder groups, they felt it was important that the high school itself, the physical high school, had that pool facility to support our student athletes and a swim program.
Right, we've had a pretty good swim program for the past 5 or 8 years.
Yes.
And they're nomads. They swim at Crestwood. They've swum at Wayne, mostly at Crestwood now. So they'll still have to be nomads for about a year.
Yes.
But ultimately, they will have a home pool to swim at.
And a very nice one at that.
And then finally, high school football field.
Yes.
Field turf is one of those more noticeable things that gets everybody's attention. Obviously, it's a better playing surface than maybe not grass, but grass that isn't taken care of to the degree that it needs to be. And we simply don't have the ability to maintain that football field at a high level with grass.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, if you're looking at using the property quite a bit, and if it's wet, it's going to present challenges. We know we have a marching band that wants to get out there. We know that we play girls and boys soccer out there. We know that we partner with Garden City Youth Athletics to use that field. So it does get a lot of usage, but we also know there's a lot of wear and tear, and we know
plus your own 2 football teams.
Our own 2 football teams, exactly. And then the weather and the upkeep and the watering. So having a grass field, you invest in that at least as much as you would a turf field.
Yeah.
And the wear and tear and the ability to get out there and use it isn't always there with a grass field.
And it's the upfront cost that creates the sticker shock
Right.
of laying out, I don't know, $700,000 or $800,000 for turf field.
Yeah, when you factor in some of the pieces now, some of that has already been taken care of because we've already renovated and replaced the high school track. So we were able to put some infrastructure in there that would eventually wind up helping to support a turf field.
And again, I won't force you to comment on this, but a big cost that's associated with this is the fact that we basically have to create an underground retention system for water. Is that correct?
Yeah, there is a piece built in there for retention. And anytime you put a hard surface down, as we saw with our high school parking lot, you got to be very mindful of stormwater runoff. And there's a formula that the county uses that's based on square footage of roof, square footage of parking lot, square footage of available hard surfaces.
And again, I won't put you in this position, but in my opinion, when you take a piece of property that has as much grass and as much exposed ground as you have there, more than anywhere in the city but in the park, I think it's absurd to have to waste taxpayers' dollars on these water retention systems when the Rouge is right down the street. So that's just
You'd be a good Wayne County commissioner. I'd like to get you on the Wayne County Commission.
Glenn Anderson and I have talked about this a lot. I think it's an absolute absurd waste of money, but that's what government does sometimes. Well, I want to thank you very much for spending time to talk with us. I want to wish you best of luck, man. You have got the hardest job in town right now.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best of luck getting schools open, getting kids settled. I hope we're able to get the buildings open sooner than later, and I wish you the best of luck on all of these renovations, because I think the residents, even those that don't have kids in school, will be very happy to see these projects done and to see the curb appeal of the Garden City schools improve dramatically.
Yeah, certainly, and I want to thank all of our members of the community, regardless of how they voted, but we had an excellent turnout on that March election. So I want to thank everybody for exercising their right to vote. I'm certainly pleased with the way that it turned out, so I want to thank the folks that supported it. And then in closing, as we move forward into this school year, I want to thank our parents. I want to give a shout out to our kids and thank them for their patience and commitment to academics, but certainly give a huge shout out to our staff. We're very fortunate here in Garden City. The feedback that I continually get from the community, and of course I'm biased because I love them all, but the community has really embraced our teachers, and our teachers continue to do a phenomenal job. So really proud of our teachers, our clerical staff, our admin team. We've got a bunch of hardworking folks here who wear the heart of the community on their sleeve, and we can be very proud of that.
So if you are a registered student in Garden City, you have online access through a number of portals, correct? Not just picking up the phone and calling, or not just going to the school district website, but there are places to find information about the upcoming school year, right? What are those?
We'll basically continue to look for In Touch. And then if you go to the Garden City Schools website, gardencityschools.com, there's a scroll there that has those updates. And then you'll continue to get updates from the building principals as they're going to populate these schedules and finalize the planning for the 2020-2021 school year. Also, keeping with our longstanding tradition, the elementary class list are going to be posted the Thursday before Labor Day. Will they be sent out electronically? Of course, you can access that in MyStar, but we like to keep things traditional. We like to encourage those folks to go up and look and check out those class lists as they get posted.
So that is a tradition.
Yes.
All right. Well, again, best of luck with everything, and thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
All right. That's it for Omni Edition Garden City for today. Thank you very much for watching, and good night, everybody.